Dungeons and Dragons is better than Dungeon World. Okay, maybe not. I don't know. But I asked ChatGPT to write me a little video script as to why Dungeons and Dragons is better than Dungeon World, and these are the results. Now, I'm also going to do the same thing in the opposite direction in a future video, and then do maybe a third video where I compare how ChatGPT did with both of these tasks and make some assumptions and things about how that's going to work, and talk about those controversies, because both games have a little bit of controversy that makes people not want to play them. However, that controversy will not be coming up in the first two videos because ChatGPT is only based on 2021, and the OGL was 2022, the Pinkerton thing was 2022, so really, WotC was waiting till 2022 to hit. Maybe they knew about ChatGPT, I don't know. I don't think it had anything to do with this video. Shh. Anyway, so I asked ChatGPT to write me a script. I'm going to read that script. I'm going to respond to that script while I'm reading that script. I'm going to tangent a lot. I'm standing up. I'm a YouTuber with legs, and that's what's going to happen. So here we go. Let's strap in and get this going. All right. When I'm reading ChatGPT, I'll try to make my voice sound a little bit more monotone so that you understand that it's ChatGPT talking, not me. So when I'm reacting, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter. Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, is a classic tabletop role-playing game that has been enjoyed by players for decades. While Dungeon World is a newer RPG that has gained popularity in recent years, many players still prefer D&D for its rich lore, extensive rule set, and focus on tactical combat. In this video, we will explore why D&D is better than Dungeon World. So far, so good. Alright, let's look at the first point. 1. Extensive lore. One of the biggest advantages of D&D is its extensive lore. With over 40 years of history, D&D has built a vast universe with deep and complex lore that players can explore and interact with. From the Forgotten Realms to Eberron, D&D's settings offer a rich tapestry of cultures, histories, and conflicts that players can immerse themselves in. So 2 general points about the D&D lore. Number 1, it talks about the worlds, but there's worlds that D&D is rejecting, like they're not going to do Dark Sun on purpose for reasons. Well, I understand those reasons. There's other players saying, yeah, but like, you know, a lot of other game systems, like Star Wars has a lot of the same problems as Dark Sun, not quite as extensive, but also Dark Sun's about global warming, so like there's like a relevant modern interest for it, whatever. And I'm not gonna take too much of a stance on that either way. I was never really into Dark Sun anyway, because, I don't know, I like playing characters that have access to steel weapons. It's just me. But anyway, there's definitely, there's lore being given up in D&D, and they were getting dinged for lore. So 40 years of lore is not necessarily a good thing. However, this is a bigger point. Yes, there's a lot of lore with this logo on it. A lot of lore with this logo on it. But here's the thing. This game, OSR games, and pretty much every other fantasy medieval game that is even remotely close to looking like D&D, especially if you're rolling a D20. You're not rolling a D20 in this, but shh. But if you're rolling a D20, you're probably using the same lore set as D&D. D&D's lore is not exclusive to D&D. Granted, it's gonna have this little symbol on it somewhere, right? It's gonna be, you know, WotC or TSR, old TSR, not any of the new TSRs. Don't even want to touch the new TSRs with a 10-foot pole. I really don't want to deal with that or talk about it. But old TSR and, of course, WotC have all the D&D lore that guys like Greenwood and Gygax, etc. had created, but like, or like, you know, Baker with Eberron with his winning a contest from WotC, so that's a WotC one. But like, that lore can be used in Dungeon World as well. And vice versa. If you're running around Dungeon World spouting lore and creating this extensive campaign history with all these extensive world-building elements while you're playing a game of Dungeon World, you could turn around, take that world, and be like, yeah, I feel like playing D&D today. Okay, and use the same world in D&D. The lore is interchangeable for the most part. There is copyright things to think about and what's Creative Commons and what isn't, but that only matters if you're publishing. That does not matter at your table. No one at your table's going to be like, I'm calling a WotC lawyer because you mentioned Eberron and we're playing Dungeon World. And yeah, no one's going to care. Nobody cares. In fact, right now, I'm running Dragon Heist in Dungeon World. So no. Sorry, Chat GPT. Extensive lore is not a valid reason for D&D being better than Dungeon World. Try again. Okay? It's gonna try again. Number 2, tactical combat. D&D's combat system is designed to be tactical and strategic, with players having a wide range of options and choices in combat. From positioning to spell selection, every decision can have a significant impact on the outcome of a battle. This level of depth and complexity makes combat encounters more engaging and satisfying, as players must use their wits and tactics to succeed. I'm going to have to give it to ChatGPT and D&D here. D&D is definitely more tactical. In fact, that's one of the things I miss about D&D when I'm playing Dungeon World, is how much more tactical things are, how much more positioning matters, how much more everything matters. Because positioning in Dungeon World is really irrelevant. Dungeon World is very much like if you read the spells in Dungeon World, they stripped all of the distances and ranges and radiuses out, and they're just like, fireball hits one enemy and like adjacent enemies, as opposed to 20-foot sphere, right? There's a lot of things you can do in D&D combat that you really can't do in Dungeon World. Well, I say that. Dungeon World can simulate anything. That's the whole point, is that it's narrative, but it's narrative, not tactical. So the tactics aren't as important as the narrative. If you prefer your combat to be much faster, more streamlined, and more narrative, then Dungeon World's your game. But if you need those tactics, D&D wins on tactics. I gotta hand it to D&D. It's winning on tactics. Customization options is number 3. D&D's character creation system is incredibly customizable, with players having a wide range of options for their race, class, abilities, and equipment. This level of customization allows players to create unique and well-rounded characters that fit their playstyle and preferences. With a vast array of options, players can create characters that are truly their own. I don't know if I would say truly their own. I think a lot of players are playing what WotC wrote as for the character thing. They're like, oh man, that sounds really cool, I'm gonna be that, and then they just kind of play that rather than kind of making it their own. But yeah, definitely a lot more options, especially with races and classes, than Dungeon World. Dungeon World has the basic classes from 2nd ed. Like, there's no sorcerer, there's no warlock. What else do they not have? They definitely have artificer, because that wasn't even a thing. I think that's it. I think it's got all the other ones. Oh, and Barbarian is a weird optional thing, as with Immolator, which is this weird, crazy Dungeon World ridiculousness that they made up at one point. But, yeah, more classes. Definitely more races. Dungeon World, depending on the class, it can be a human, an elf, a dwarf, or a halfling, and that's pretty much it. D&D has a lot more options for that. But that's not necessarily a good thing. As I've said in other videos, a lot of the races in D&D, you get things like dark vision. Some of them can fly. Owlins can fly and have dark vision. And that kind of creates situations where it's harder to write good traps or tactical situations for these characters because of all the crazy racials that they get. You don't get that in Dungeon World. I don't even think anybody has dark vision in Dungeon World. Like, it never explicitly states that a character has dark vision, so you don't. Good luck. You need torches. But yeah, and there's other games that are like that as well. But yeah, D&D definitely does have more customizational options. And if you think that's a good thing, then point to D&D. So I'm gonna give ChatGPT and D&D the point here. So 2 out of 5 so far. 2 out of its 5 points so far, or 2 out of 3, I guess, because we've only done 3 points in favor of D&D being superior. Let's see. Number 4, in-depth rules. D&D's rule set is extensive, with rules covering every aspect of the game, from combat to social interaction. While this level of detail can sometimes be overwhelming for new players, understatement! Sorry, dusty in here. It also allows for a greater degree of control and specificity in gameplay. With rules covering everything from movement speed to spellcasting mechanics, D&D offers a level of detail and precision that is unmatched in other RPGs. Like, well, that last sentence is just false, because, like, Pathfinder 2 is actually even more in-depth than D&D. Actually, like, if you look at it, because it's based off of 3rd ed, which was more in-depth than 5th ed, because they simplified 5th ed because 3rd ed was too in-depth, and 4th ed was too much like Warcraft. There was some good stuff in 4th ed, don't get me wrong. I don't completely hate on 4th ed, and the essential stuff, if you played 4th Ed with the essentials classes, it felt like D&D again. But yeah, I understand why people didn't like it. I understand why they did it. I understand why they undid it and did 5th Ed instead, and 5th Ed is a much better system than 4th. It is, but the in-depthness of rules, it is not the most in-depth system. I've played Shadowrun. It is D&D 5th edition is not the most in-depth system, but it is more in-depth than Dungeon World. That said, it's less in-depth than 3rd edition, and there's reasons that they moved away from that level of depth. And I think that the simplifications that you get in Dungeon World make for better gameplay, I think. But if you like in-depth rules, 1, check out Pathfinder 2, because it's even more in-depth, and 2, yeah, point for D&D. I'm going to give them this point because it does have more in-depth rules. It is a legit thing to say, so we're going to give it to them. Replayability, number 5. D&D's vast universe and deep lore offer endless possibilities for replayability. With a wide range of settings, there we go, I can't speak English today, campaigns and modules, players can continue to explore new stories and characters for years to come. The level of replayability makes D&D a game that players can return to time and time again, always finding new adventures and challenges to overcome. So, replayability... So I'm going to take this in two different ways of thinking about replayability. Is it replayable with the same characters, or is it just replayable as a game? If you want to say with the same characters, most D&D campaigns end around 5th to 7th level, because after that the game starts to become a little bit unplayable. It's really hard to write good adventures for higher level characters. It's almost impossible for less experienced DMs to do this, and you're gonna mess up your first time running with high level characters. You're gonna run encounters, and they're gonna just run ramshot over some of your encounters because they're gonna have way too many powers, way too much stuff to do. The spells just get ridiculous. Polymorph, we were doing a ocean-based campaign, and we polymorphed an obelisk into a bunny, which I then stabbed and put in my bag of holding, and then we polymorphed somebody else into a whale to destroy an enemy ship, because we were somebody that could fly. They grabbed something, whale, and there was no petunias, however, so just get that out of your mind. So yeah, replayability, but also Dungeon World goes up to 10th level, not 20th level, and once you hit 10th level it gets kind of weird, and then there's rules for, like, you can either dual class your character into something else, take on an apprentice, or just retire. And that's pretty much all you can do at 10th level. And you get to 10th level pretty quickly because it's a very fast system with the failure equals XP thing. It's pretty fast. So yeah, neither one is particularly replayable with the same characters. I do think D&D campaigns can last a little bit longer if your DM is smart. If you look at some of my older videos when I still played D&D about, like, reducing XP down, just using 3rd level XP based off the encounter difficulty and just giving that out forever. That will make the game much more replayable for D&D than for Dungeon World, or even Pathfinder, because Pathfinder got rid of the exponential charts and just made the chart the same the whole way through, which means you can't pull BS like I was pulling and elongate higher levels. It just doesn't work. You're stuck. So in that level of replayability, I'd say that they're both... But when it comes to coming back to the game again and again, how is it with a wide range of settings, campaigns, and modules? You can, again, anything with... There's literally a chapter in this book about converting D&D modules to Dungeon World. Right? So anything you can do in D&D, you can do in Dungeon World, and vice versa. So really, when it comes to, like, lore, replayability, and even just dungeons and modules, yeah, they're both about equally as replayable. So I'm going to have to say that either it's not valid for either game... not true for either game. Valid, all these points are valid, they make logical sense, that's validity. But yeah, it's not true for either game, or it's true for both. So, alright D&D, you get 3 out of 5 points for your Chat GPT things. Now let's look at the conclusion. In conclusion, while Dungeon World offers a unique and streamlined RPG experience, D&D's extensive lore, tactical combat, customization options, in-depth rules, and replayability make it a classic and beloved RPG that many players still prefer. that part's true. Many players do still prefer it, or did until, they started messing with the OGL and calling Pinkertons on people, but that's a whole other story. Whether you're a seasoned player or just starting, D&D offers a rich and engaging gaming experience that is sure to keep you coming back for more. I'd say they both do, honestly. I think that, yes, I'm going to give it tactics. I'm going to give it, what did we say? Extensive lore, no. Tactical combat, yes. Customization options, yes, if you like that sort of thing. And in-depth rules, again, yes, if you like that sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely more tactical, more customizable, and the rules are more in-depth. That said, they do say you can do whatever you want with Dungeon World, and I'm in a Dungeon World West Marches game, and people are trying to make up their own races and their own racial traits for character classes, and I think that's great. I think it's wonderful. I think they should. And yeah, there might be a question of balance, but Dungeon World doesn't care as much about balance because, again, there's no action economy, really. So balance is a little bit easier to maintain because the DM just, smacks you with a stick if you do something stupid. But anyway, so that is Dungeons & Dragons being a better game than Dungeon World. My next video in this series will be Dungeon World is a better game than D&D, and then I will compare ChatGPT's results with both of these, and talk about which one I think won in ChatGPT and which one I think wins in Scandal, because they both of these games have some scandal behind them. They're scandals. And we'll talk about them some other time. Provocative. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, let me know in the comments. And yeah, I will talk to you later. Peace out, everybody.